So one of the things that Kahn is concerned with in his book, or wants to talk about, is this idea of displaying ease. One of the things this idea means is being able to show kind of naturalness, or as I mentioned last week, being able to show kind of a feel for the game, a feel for the way life is lived, and to display it with our bodies as ease. Now, what comes really quickly, as you'll see in Kahn, and as I'll say here, is that ease is not natural. Ease is learned, all right? I'm trying to drill this idea through today. So we can start off with what might be a controversial claim, but talent, including things such as ease, the natural display of bodies, is not inherently natural. Well, how do we know that? We could give lots of examples, but let me give one, I think, kind of stunning example from a sociologist by the name of Loïc Wacquant. Wacquant, for one of his research projects, decided, now this is a French guy, he was a student of Pierre Bourdieu's, living in Chicago, decides to become a boxer. So kind of a wiry, white French guy decides to start training with a boxing gym in inner city Chicago. And what Wacquant finds is that being a boxer is not just about learning how to do that. And I've probably done that horribly for any of you that are a boxer fan. But it's not just about learning how to defend and to throw punches. But instead, being a boxer is this intimate system of shaping the body and the habitus, i.e. that's what's not physically available, at the same time. So it requires this range of training disciplines. For example, being able to show up on time, being able to have a mindset of overcoming defeat, having a sense that every little thing you do will show up in how your body moves, and how you take care of your body will form what's inside of you. And Wacquant shows that in becoming a boxer, you're not simply becoming this kind of autonomous machine that knows how to throw the right punch, but you're actually learning all these patterns of how to breathe, how to eat, and you're even learning that a punch is not just a punch, because a punch requires a certain amount of timing. It requires a certain rhythm. It requires special movements that you don't just break down in a mechanical way and learn like a data drive or a manual, but is this precise training between getting the mindset and the body motion to be able to move at the exact same moment. And importantly, to do all this without having to overtly thinking about it. So that when the first time he's in the ring, he is kind of thinking, okay, I'm supposed to move this punch in a certain way to keep my arm level maybe, or to bring it up a certain degrees as I throw this punch. But to be a boxer, you actually have to get a feel for the game. You have to display ease. You have to get to the point where you're doing those things without thinking. You haven't become an automaton, a robot that just goes through the motions, because if you just go through the motions, you actually lose the ability to kind of coordinate and to continue to motivate that ability to punch and to box. So it's a strange sweet spot between thinking about it too much and just going through the motion. That sweet spot is the feeling of naturalness, is the feeling of ease. And as Wacquant shows through his own becoming a boxer, that's difficult to get to. And when we see it, how hard it is to get to, we realize that you remember from earlier in the semester that art world's concept is true also for our bodies, which is that our bodily talent or our bodily ease, our bodily display is actually this big network of productive forces from parents and food and environment and the place we live, whether we have sun or not, whether we can go running any day on the beach or not. So there's this whole mystified background of network that has gone into shaping our body that we must unveil, we must understand. What is problematic, and Kahn shows this really quick, is that there are some people, and this is really important, for whom displaying ease is completely contradicted by biological traits, or is made almost impossible by biological traits that have become social differences by which important symbols of embodied capital are understood differently versus other people. The good examples of this are, of course, a number of examples about minority students, about female students, and about some students, I can't remember the student's name, but the one who always looks busy, who is kind of out of the norm in terms of their looks. Actually, you can give other examples. There's the it seems the male student who is artistic. There's also an gay student in the book, and also the young woman who's kind of bent over with books and always moving too quickly. We see that there are certain markers that make it almost impossible to be considered as being at ease. And what's important is that these marks, many of which are kind of biological, become a place where social distinctions center on, and they are able to kind of exclude or make different for what seems like a biological reason, but is actually about this competition that's going on between bodies, between what is considered natural and of ease and what is considered kind of unnatural or kind of beyond the group boundaries. And whereas in other types of capital, like economic or cultural capital, you can get more, in these cases, embodied capital works a little differently, because you can't just give away, you can't become male or become white and therefore have the advantage that white males have at this private school. And so embodied capital has this kind of different tension in it than other forms of capital do, because it's something that just kind of can't be wiped away or totally changed. And so therefore Kahn shows that these groups of persons struggle then in the school because they can't kind of hit that sweet spot of normality or ease that other people hit, and they have expectations placed on them by those other more normal bodies, i.e. white, male, athletic bodies at the school. So there's expectations about having a certain ability to really know what's cool, or there's expectations about being able to control sexuality for this group that can't be managed easily. So for the new elite, as Kahn is arguing, part of the challenge is to show an ease, to show that being this way, moving through hierarchies, doing hard work, doesn't require too much of you. But Kahn goes on to show that immediately puts at a disadvantage these marked bodies who are unable to meet that standard of ease for biological markers that have become part of this, the symbolic struggle over the advantage of embodied capital. Now, as a side note, we could say that a lot of the hyper-concentration on obesity that's happening nationwide today has some of these characteristics. Now, without a doubt, obesity can have important impacts on health and on a life course, what you're able to achieve and do in your life course. But obesity also has deep class issues attached to it. Some of similar to like what we've seen in Kahn today. For example, obesity is overrepresented in poor and minority groups, and has been for a long time, but it wasn't until obesity rates inched up a little bit in white groups, especially white middle-class groups, that all of a sudden it caught social attention. And it's the case that oftentimes for certain poor and minority groups, it's much harder to have what is considered normal, fit, okay body capital because of less access to healthy foods. to historical patterns of eating, and to bodies that are disadvantaged in terms of environments that they have to grow up on, don't have physical education courses, or don't have access to green spaces, a lot like living in a city like Los Angeles does to you. So we see throughout the Kahn book and through just a quick example like obesity that what is often seen as struggles about naturalness or about what is appearing in front of us in a body, in the background has these deep struggles about judgments of internal character, about what is normal, about what is the sweet spot, and that bodies and some of the naturalness and biologicalness of bodies inherently knocks out a bunch of people who are able to gain easy access to that ease, and therefore embodied capital is a really important resource to understand in these in a field of competition over power and over how far you can get in a particular field. Now, a couple of closing comments on Kahn, who I've been mentioning throughout. But note here that Kahn is arguing again that whereas Bourdieu said that cultural capital or a knowledge of the world is the most important thing for the elite, Kahn is arguing that one of the most important forms of capital is embodied sense of displaying ease, displaying that you belong. He goes on to show that there is an important aspect of showing the importance now is to show who you are and displaying who you are versus where you're from. Okay, so an earlier generation of the elite relied on where I'm from for status, but now it's who you are. And this fits in one way in the sense that nowadays there are more minorities and women at an elite school such as St. Paul's. However, displaying who you are is always this, in itself has this process of inequality that I've been talking about. And it requires also, as you'll see in these chapters, buying into St. Paul's in a way that is really hard for students who are marked. So for both women and minority groups, it's especially hard to kind of buy into this natural normed center of what's right and what's look right, because these groups are already at a disadvantage right out of the gate. So pay attention to how how embodied capital works in these chapters, and pay attention to how, as I started off with, biological differences come on to take symbolic importance in social struggles, but also then how those social struggles that involve embodied capital are naturalized to make it seem that almost that inequality and that struggle isn't happening, or that it's just naturally that way. So I hope you enjoy these couple of chapters. Again, we'll have a quiz this Thursday. If you have any questions, as always, let me know sooner than later, and I will see you next week. Okay.